So we'll just kind of set up here. All right, and all right, I don't know, many of you know Peter. He's been involved with our church for a while. He helped out with the men's ministry a lot too, so I appreciate that. But
Thank you.
I'm going to leave it.
Okay. Give me a second to go fire it up over there. Let's hope this thing works.
You want the PowerPoint now?
Not yet. Good.
It's alive.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And let me know when you're all set, Mike. Okay. Morning, guys.
Morning.
First, I want to just thank Hope Chapel for letting me come up here and speak and give my testimony. This is really huge for me. I've never actually said this publicly in front of people, so my first time, and just kind of bear with me. But I really can't thank you guys enough. Thank you. As stated, this is going to be my testimony on how God healed me from numerous childhood traumas, two of which are going to be having to do with the premature death of my dad and some subsequent sexual abuse I suffered that same year at the age of 15. Let me just give you a little outline of how I'm going to be speaking. I'll give you 2 seconds about me and a couple little facts and figures about things just to get you grounded. And then I'm going to talk about my story in 3 sections. First is going to be my life before I met God. Then I'm going to get into how and where I met God. And then finally, how life has been since I met God. In summary, I have the life Jesus died for me to have. And you can too. So, a little bit about me. I'm 62 years old. I've been married 37 years to the same woman. Please pray for her. Some of you know what I'm talking about. 3 children, 33 and 30-year-old daughters, 24-year-old son. My youngest 2 were foster children that we adopted as older children. So if you or anyone you know is interested in foster care or adoption, see me afterwards. I'd love to tell you about what we did and what works, and in some cases what didn't work, but adoption can work. It can work for your family. Just became a grandfather, 5-month-old boy, and another one on the way. Okay, Mike, you hit those slides there, please. On your table, there is a handout. If you take a second, just pass those out. And I'm going to go through just a couple of quick things, and then there's some information at the end that you can take with you for certain things. Give me a second, pass those out. Okay, as we see up on the screen here, 2 seconds of facts and figures about the sexual abuse I just mentioned. According to a CDC study, I think I did the, there we go. Technology, I love it. Mess that up. According to the CDC study in 2005, 1 out of 6 men in America has suffered from some form of childhood sexual abuse in their childhood before the age of 18. This is 24 million men. We know in the study that this is underreported. So this is beyond an epidemic, gentlemen. Next time you're at a ball game, if you're looking around at the stadium and you see 100,000 guys or whatever, that's over 16,000 guys in that audience who were affected. And one other little factoid, more men suffer from childhood sexual abuse than prostate cancer. And that's a proven statistic. Beyond an epidemic. And what's going on out there today, and I know we all watch the news, and sometimes the news doesn't give us the rest of the story, but it's been proven that a child is 9 times more likely to be sexually abused if they're with a single parent or in a very troubled household, which I had the 2 strikes against me. Let's do the next slide. Okay. Men who have this and other associated traumas are prime candidates for post-traumatic stress and depression. And I can tell you from experience that is a very real condition. It is not a character flaw or weakness, but it is treatable, and you can heal from it and live with it. It abuses the root cause of a lot of the addictions, if not most of the addictions we see out there today in society. And the news does cover all of the behaviors and things that we see ripping our country apart, and nobody talks about it. Suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, it just really messes with people's heads, and on and on and on about the mental health conditions that I won't bore you with, but just understand, people, this is a huge, serious problem. And I'm so glad, I'm thankful the church is starting to talk about it. It's about time. Okay, you can shut that down, Mike, for now. Let me get into now this section about what life was like before I met God. 2 seconds of background. I'm an only child. My dad was a World War II combat vet. Mom was a homemaker. Italian-American background, very typical for, back in the day that you would see in the 60s. My maternal grandmother had numerous undiagnosed mental illnesses, which back in the day, if you were, quote, crazy and nobody would talk about or deal with that, not that there was any help to deal with it anyway. And her behavior just literally ripped my family apart. The fighting, the chaos, just brutal. My mother was consumed with trying to manage my grandmother. My father had pretty much been checked out. And I was kind of forgotten. In April of 1972, I was 15, and my grandmother died in April, and then 6 weeks later, my father dropped dead from a heart attack. Interesting enough, I just thought of something. His last words were to me to get a haircut. You guys remember back in the day, if your hair touched your ears in 1972, you were a hippie and you disgraced your family and all of that stuff, which pales in comparison with the stuff we see now. But yeah, he yelled at me at the supper table, get that GD haircut, and 3 hours later, he was dead. Just like that. So, lesson learned. Be very careful what you tell your boys. Might be the last thing they remember. So, between all of those tragedies, I was always a hustler. I always had a buck in my pocket from paper routes and different jobs. And I met a customer on my paper route, a 28-year-old man who wound up sexually abusing me and a classmate in his home that same year. It was the classic grooming behaviors that predators do, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And I was the absolutely stereotypical classic victim. Broken family, absent dad, no mom, sad, ignored, depressed, you name it. Prime candidate. You can turn the slide back on now, please. Here's your laugh for the day. Who had those sideburns back in the day? Raise your hand.
What happened, Pete?
Yeah. That's me, 17, high school graduation picture. And to look at that kid, you'd think he had it all, that his dad's death never bothered him. I mean, I had the girlfriends, I played high school football, the jobs, good grades, all the things you would want a good kid to have. But like that saying somewhere in the Bible, I forget the verse, about the being a whitewashed tomb full of dead men's bones. That was him. He looked really good on the outside, but inside, nothing but dry, rotted, dusty, dead boy bones. And nobody knew, because he didn't talk about stuff back then. Overnight, after Dad died, I decided that I had to be the man of the house. Didn't know what a man was, or what he was supposed to do, or say, or be, or whatever, but by gosh, I was going to be one, because I had to protect Mom. Overnight, kid starts dealing with, how am I going to survive? How am I going to care for my mother? We weren't rich, but we weren't poor, but we were definitely not rich. We didn't own our own home or anything. So, how are we going to survive? Going to run out of money. Dealing with all of that. In addition, I thought everything was all my fault. My dad's death, my abuse, the intense shame and guilt and embarrassment and all of that. And I didn't think I had the right to say no. I just didn't think anybody would listen to me, or I just didn't think I could say no. I had never done anything like that before. I lost control of my brain and my body. The terror that goes with it is kind of produced one of those out-of-body experiences that you hear about people. It's very common for children to have those. I thought I was permanently damaged goods and less of a man. And as I learned the hard way as I became a parent, a 15-year-old boy is not a man. So to be less of a man was impossible because I wasn't a man at the time. how do you lose something you never had in the first place? Major learning there. A lot of people died around then, big Italian family, extended family, a lot of people dying around me. And I learned just never to trust on anybody because they're gonna just die or hurt you. And I basically fell for every single lie that Satan threw at me, lock, stock, and barrel. So to react and deal, I tried to prove myself, again with the football, jobs, money, girls, beer, and all the stuff that went on back in the day to prove I wasn't damaged goods. I went to a Catholic high school, and I always thought that God was over here, and I would struggle with the why God, why questions, and over here was the church with the rules and the do's and the don'ts and all that kind of stuff, and they always, I could never reconcile the two. I really struggled with the why God, why do you allow this kind of stuff, and I really thought it was God's plan to punish me for something, for what I did, and in hindsight, it wasn't what I did, it was an attack and what was done to me. Tried to bury it all during the years, but again, the voices, damaged goods and never good enough. Just never good enough, which failed miserably. My coping strategy was to what I'll call a success junkie. I decided if I threw myself into my career that and with the success of my career, I could then be good enough. It was socially acceptable at the time, that's what guys did. And I got out of school, I took a couple of jobs, and wound up at the Digital Equipment Corporation back in the day. Any techies here? Former? Yeah, always a few. Did 31 years with them through the Compaq and Hewlett-Packard mergers. And I was always going after that one more raise, promotion, bonus, review, whatever. If I just got the one more thing, then I'd be good enough. But I had this hole in my heart that success just couldn't fill. Life went on. We had no trouble having our first child, and we couldn't have a second child for whatever reason. Doctors couldn't figure out what the reason was. But I was convinced that was my fault. I must have done something to cause us not having kids. We tried the adoption routine with foster child, and our first attempt failed miserably. We had a child who was much more sick and disturbed than anybody realized. Good news is the child went out and got to the place he needed to be. He got the help. But again, to me that was like a character flaw. I couldn't fix this permanently damaged kid. So you can see the head games going on. I kept my secrets for probably 15 years, and then opened up when I had my first child. Told my wife, a couple of cousins. They didn't know what to do because back then, late 1980s, men didn't have stories. So in hindsight, they've been fantastic to me. My wife has been my lifeline. I couldn't have done it without her. I guess God gave her to me for a reason. But nobody else in my life knew back in the day, and it was a closely kept secret. Now let me get into a little bit about how and where I met God. When my daughter was 2, I decided the Catholic Church wasn't for my family, so I went shopping around, found a lot of good ones. I continued to struggle with the why God, why, and are you there, and why do you allow all this kind of stuff? And then I started going to church groups and Bible studies, whatever, and reading the Bible, and all of a sudden, I read about all these Bible greats, Moses and David and Jeremiah and all these people, and they're asking the same questions. And they got God, and they got all this power, and they're asking the same stuff as me. And I'm like, what a concept. I couldn't believe it. I got saved in the late 90s. For the next 10 years, I wandered around saying, okay, I'm saved, now what? And people would just kind of look at me and weren't sure what to tell me. I didn't know what I was supposed to hear, but I didn't have that feeling that everybody had when they get saved, that some of you guys might know about. I was still very much a control freak in my life as I lost control as a child. I figured I had to control my entire world and environment because God wasn't going to, and I wouldn't trust anybody to do anything else. In hindsight, I never lost control because I never had control. God had control. You can't lose something you didn't have in the first place. Another lesson from the School of Hard Knocks. By then, the career got insane and just beyond crazy. Any of you who wound up at Dick in the last days, I wound up taking a voluntary retirement in 2012 and just took the money and ran. And that's when everything hit. I couldn't hide from my past, my phobia against being unemployed and never going to get a job, I'm not good enough, I'm going to not be able to support my family. My 92-year-old mother moved in with us, and just everything just caught up. So just after Christmas 2012, I checked into McLean's, into the short-term depression unit. That was my third hospitalization in probably 5 years. I did 2 weeks in McLean's at that time. And I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. I couldn't fix me. The doctors couldn't fix me. And I had no hope. And I was in my own private hell. And it suddenly occurred to me that if hell is worse than this, I don't want any part of this. So at that point, I decided to have it up with God. I had this humongous discussion. Now, just to get grounded, I didn't have a plan. I didn't actually try to do anything to take my life or whatever, but I was totally convinced that life and the world would be better off if I wasn't here. And I thought that that was the only way to make the pain go away. Little did I know. I thought dying was the only way out, and I begged God to take my life. And I said this publicly. But I swore at God. And I told him, it sounds so stupid now, that he didn't have the balls to take my life. And that's what I knew. I was done. So I asked God to heal me. And I gave up. I gave up the fight. And in hindsight, when you give up the fight, you wind up winning the war. And this is like the most convoluted logic I could have ever thought in my life. It's like real guys don't give up. But when you give up and give over, that's when the healing started. And I said to God, God, if you do something with this mess I got going on over here, I will do anything you want with it. But you're going to have to tell me, because I don't know anything anymore. I didn't know anything. And so help me guys, I felt a tap on the back of my head, and I got up, and I finally got out of bed, and I went in the other room with the other patients, and that was the start of my healing. I started to get back on my feet. It took a while, but like I said before, depression and PTSD is not weakness or a character flaw. Real guys do get this stuff, and there is so much help out there, guys. There is so much help out there today, unlike 20, 30, 40 years ago. Even the last 10 years, just the strides that they've made. If you or anyone else suffers from that sort of thing, get help, guys. You're worth it, and it's just so worth it. So life got better. I'll talk a little bit about my life since meeting God. After the hospital, I hit it with everything I could possibly think of, the therapies, the doctors, some meds, support groups, family and friends, anybody who would talk to me. One of the things I learned is that, of course, us guys, we're fixers. We like to fix things. We have to fix things. This isn't fixable. It can't be quickly fixed. It can't really be fixed at all. You have to just go back. You have to go back. You have to deal with everything that happened. You have to feel every crappy emotion associated with it and deal with anything. And only then are you going to heal and come back to have the life Jesus died for us to have. As I got healthy mentally and spiritually, I decided I need to lose a bunch of weight. So I joined Weight Watchers, figuring I'd drop a few pounds and instead wound up changing my life. Among other things, Weight Watchers has this really cool social media out there for all of their members for supporting things. And one of the first things I saw out there was people out there struggling, and I finally figured out why so many people struggle with Weight Watchers. Because they're food addicts. They try to numb their pain with food. And you take away the food, they're stuck with their pain, they don't know what to do, and all these people were on their social media telling their stories and all of their struggles and how they overcame. And I said, you know what? That's it. I'm telling my story. And I did. And I told it on the social media, the high points, and social media blew up for days. Guys don't talk about stories. Nobody thought guys had these kind of stories. All these women came up and said, my husband, my father, my brother, my this, my that. This happened, and they're drinking like fishes, and I don't know what to do. And other guys came up, told their stories. It was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing, the love and support I got. As that was going on, a number of my Weight Watcher pals said, you know, you should go work with guys. You'd be good helping guys and things, and you got a knack. And I'm like, get out of here. I'm not talking about this publicly with any of you people look nuts. But, of course, I planned, God laughed, and I decided to contact some groups, and I found the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center in Cambridge, and I walked in and said, hey, I'm healed. I'd love to come down and help some guys. How can I help you? And I sat and talked with the director who pushed a couple of buttons, and I completely fell apart in her office. After a couple of visits, she says, oh, that's okay. Everybody who wants to do it. Nobody's ready to go do volunteering. So, okay, at least I'm not a loser here. So she was great. I worked with her for a number of months. And as she's helping me with some things, the Weight Watcher people watched all the chatter in the social media. And they decided to do a feature magazine, feature article on Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And they contacted me. Excuse me. And they said, we've been looking all over America for a guy who will tell us his metoo story, but we can't get anybody to talk to us. I said, well, let me tell you a few things. And I went off on her for about an hour. For a while, she was quiet. I thought she hung up. And, oh, no, I'm still here. I'm just writing. And to make a long story short, she called me back, and I wound up being in the magazine. And it got in, my story got, among my story and 4 other people, got into an international magazine. If you turn it on now, Mike, please. That's me in the story. It's amazing what a $2,000 suit that you borrow and a computer can do to a picture. little trick photography there. Yeah, I cleaned up pretty good. But seriously, unlike the boy who was broken and hopeless, this guy got his life back. This guy got his life back. When the magazine article hit, the social media went on for months between people, the love and support congratulating me, the people coming out with their stories, people saying, because I saw the story of these 5 people, I'm getting help, and they got help, and they talked about it. I saw people reach out to help others coming along in the social media, and the healing just went on and on and on. I was stunned at what God did with this. Another lesson learned, when you drop a pebble in the ocean, gentlemen, you never know. You never know where those ripples are going to go. And I'm still getting those ripples today. I still get people seeing the Weight Watcher website and reading the article and my interview and things. As you would imagine, the article kicked off a whole bunch of crap that I didn't even know existed. Got some help, got through that. And I wound up last Mother's Day going down to the cemetery and have a little discussion with Mom and Dad. And I spent 45 minutes talking about the last 45 years. And then I took a copy of the magazine article and I buried it at the grave. I walked away. I'm free at last. Just like that. Amen. Just like that. If you think back to the guy in the hospital and the promise I made to God, that's why I did the article. And that's why I'm here. I made a promise to God to do something, and God opened the doors, and He wanted me to talk. So I did. And He touched my life, and He gave me my life. And as I think in the hospital, as I wanted Him to take my life, He took my life. He took my life and gave me a much better one. And if he can do it for me, guys, he can do it for you too. He can do it for you too. Okay, now if you would pick up the slides, the handout on your table, please, and open up to page 2. I'll talk about just a couple of quick bullets here. Called the top 10 truths about abuse and/or trauma. Pick out a few of these. I don't know how much time I have. Two of the biggest lessons a victim has to learn is number 1 and 2. None of that was my fault. And I did nothing to deserve that. If you think about number 4, about the feelings associated with trauma, feelings can't hurt you unless you stuff them down and you bury them and you decide to deal with them through an addiction, and then you got a whole other set of problems. You got the original problems and now all the crap that goes with an addiction. Number 6, we're only as sick as our secrets. No more secrets, gentlemen. No more secrets, no more sickness. And the toughest one for me is probably number 9. I will never, ever let the reason for my pain serve as an excuse to stay where I am for the rest of my life. And you shouldn't either. So, there's a couple of things I want you guys to walk away with. As men in charge of your family and protecting your family, there's a lot of things you need to do to protect your girls and your boys, don't forget the boys, about sexual abuse. You go over to page 3. Okay. Over to page 3. Pop says to help prevent sexual abuse, number 1, know the facts. I gave you a whole bunch of facts. It's an epidemic, like I said, I think we've proven it. Number 2, look for signs in your children. Yes, some of the stuff is stupid teenage behavior that we all did, but there's a number of things that come up that could be leading indicators of a problem. Number 3 is to clearly educate yourself and your children. We gotta talk to our children, especially our boys, at the appropriate ages in appropriate ways. They're hearing this stuff anyway. You call your boys aside, you start telling them something like this, they're gonna tell you 4 or 5 guys they know in school that this happened to. Because I've seen it. I've seen it happen in more cases than I care to think about. But you've got to tell your children that no matter what happened, you're going to believe them, and it's not their fault, and you love them. If you go down to the other resources for men and families, if you or anyone you know is impacted by any of this, item A is exactly how to talk to a child or teen about sexual abuse and prevention. There's 3 websites there. One is for younger children. It's in the comic book format. The other 2 are step-by-step scripts that you can use to educate your children and keep them out of trouble. If you or anyone you know needs any serious help, item B, there are 2 websites with trained counselors, hotlines 24/7. One is the 1in6.org, that's for men, and the other one, rain.org, is for anyone. 2 top-notch sites, tons of information, tons of people available. A great local resource is item C, Boston Area Rape Crisis Center in Cambridge. They also have a 24-hour hotline, there's the website. And if you want to help a survivor in your life, or God forbid, your child is impacted, there's a website right underneath that will give you a step-by-step script as to how to handle things and how to proceed. Item D, I talked about the grooming behaviors of predators. If your child is in some group or school or whatever, and you think something looks weird and you're just not sure, or something feels odd, go to that link. It'll tell you how to identify predators, and it'll confirm or resolve anything that you might be seeing in your head. But that's exactly how they operate. Item E, Oprah did a documentary, 200 Men Tell This Story, fantastic piece of journalism. And item F, lastly, is the link to the Weight Watcher article. It's got an interview on that in addition to the story. That's the front page of the story. Those are the 4 other people who were in the story with me. They flew us down to New York for a full day photo shoot and everything. Tough job being with those ladies, but somebody had to do it. Not easy being me, let me tell you. And then the last thing in the package, this is the actual story on the last page for a reading interest. So, just to wrap up, guys, here, I had to go through everything I went through to be the guy that God wanted me to be. Why is up to Him. I learned that the true test of manhood is not running around and drinking beer and getting into fights and all that crap we see in the movies. It's really taking a hard look at your past and resolving things. And that's true healing. I'm an example of what God took what the devil meant for bad and turned it into something good, because I've told my story and I can't even tell you the people who blessed me with their lives and their stories. And like Job, I got back the years the locust ate. And so can you. And above all, I just want a lot of guys out there to know that they're not alone. There is so much help out there, unlike years ago. There's so much help. There's so much healing you can do. There is absolutely no need to suffer in silence. It's a very different world out there. And wrap up with, pay attention. One of my favorite quotes from Jimmy Carter: "My faith demands I do whatever I can, wherever I can, whenever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have to try to make a difference." That's what I'm trying to do, and hope you're ready. Now open it up for any kind of questions. Yes?
Mike, could you put the slide on of Peter in the suit and whatever? When I saw that, there we go.
Go ahead, Mike.
There we go.
Now,
When I saw that, what popped in my mind was the, I think it's the Avis commercial with the guy walks around, I'm in control and whatever. And I always can relate to that because that is what I want to be, always in control. And I know you're talking about sexual abuse, but I've suffered verbal abuse for many years growing up, which similar outcomes in terms of that.
yeah.
And I think as men, we react in terms of we have to control everything.
Yeah.
And I watch that guy, and there's a certain part of me that wants to be that guy and control and everything, whatever. And I'm always wondering, after he pulls out of the Hertz or Avis, whatever his place, in control and whatever,
Yeah.
he goes down the road, he breaks down or something, and there's no one around to help him out. He would totally fall apart. And I see you up there, and I go, you almost kind of look like that guy, but I know that you accepted the fact that you're not in control.
Right.
And I can really relate when you said that you had to let go of that
Yeah.
and finally reach for God,
Yeah.
for help and all that,
Yeah.
which now presents you, if I didn't know your story, I'm looking at that picture of you, I would think, oh, this guy has everything in control.
Yeah.
But you really don't.
No. Control is an illusion.
But you look in that picture like you do.
Right.
It's like an illusion.
And that's what I tried to do when I was younger, give off the vibe that I am in control and nothing's wrong with this kid. And my aunts and uncles look at me and it's like, how come this kid's not bothered by anything? It didn't dawn on them that, yeah, I'm burying stuff, because a lot of my other cousins lost their dads and things, and they were doing a lot of different things, getting in trouble, and it was kind of obvious then, but nobody really understood things back
I mean, you
then.
look at that picture, you didn't know the story, guys would go, wow, I want to be like that guy. He's total control, But you have to know your story.
You can't lose something you didn't have in the first place. Other questions? Yes?
Yeah, Peter, I was wondering, in all that you told us, you were very careful not to bring any accusation against the individual that assaulted you, but did you ever confront that person? And
Yeah, actually. I did. The person died in 1995. I'm a bit of a detective, so I went down to City Hall and pulled the death certificate. And I learned his causes of death and all the illnesses he had. And he abused his body for decades. He died at age 50 in 1995. I only looked this up like last year. I found his gravesite, and I did have it out with him. Yeah, but that's as good as you could do.
Did you forgive him? Is that part of it?
I'm finding forgiveness as a process, not an event. It kind of goes in layers. So I think I've done what I can do right now, and if there's more, I'll deal with it. If not, then that's it. But it's very much a process with me and not an event. So it takes a while. Good question. Okay, other questions?
My name's Kevin. I know Peter through my men's group. I was also abused as a kid. I do a lot of speaking for the Boston Area Rape Crisis Group, and that's how we met through them. We have our own men's group. It's not ran by anybody, just a bunch of guys that meet every 2 weeks and just talk about life and how things that happened in the past affect your life now. I just wanted to say I was really proud of Peter today for speaking for the first time about this. It's not easy. The more you do it, like anything else, the easier it gets. But there's a lot of support out there. He mentioned on his sheet that there's an organization called 1 in 6, and if you take a chance to look at their website, they have probably 60, 80 guys, and they tell their story and their photo in there. It's really powerful. When you do start talking and you find out you're not alone, it makes a huge difference in your life. Peter didn't mention earlier, but usually men take a lot longer than women to address the issue. It's usually 25 years. We have a guy in our group right now that's 70 years old, and he just started addressing it last year. So, I mean, he's been living with this for 60 years. And if we can help him or help other people, that's, I mean, there's 2 here. There may be another one, maybe there isn't, but I would be willing to guess that there's another person in the room here. It's not uncommon. But once you can share your story, you shed that shame. It's pretty powerful. My 2 kids, one's a senior, going to be a senior in college, and the other's a senior in high school. When you can get to a point where you can share that with your family, and they support you, and your son writes his college essay about you, about what happened to you, and where you ended up, and it's all rewarding. And I just wanted to thank Peter for, when I was waiting out in that parking lot and I didn't see him pull out, I said, this guy's not coming. I said, I'm gonna get stuck they're talking to these guys. Where is he? He said 7:15, he's a guy, everybody's here at 7.
You're waiting for a text or something.
And I'm gonna get stuck doing this, but you did an excellent job.
Thank you, Kevin. I mean, that means a lot.
Thank you for having me.
I have a due appreciation for you and the guys who, the phone rings and you do it the next day and you don't even think about it. You make it look easy.
The more you do it,
It's not.
it gets it. Somebody talked about forgiveness earlier. My abuser was my mother's boyfriend. I was 10 years old. Forgiveness isn't for the person that abused you or did something wrong. Forgiveness is for you. When you find that forgiveness, you let something go. It doesn't have any value to you anymore as far as why you didn't forgive somebody. I did a similar thing. Went to the gravestone, sat there for a while at the Veterans Cemetery, and forgiveness is a way for me to move on. And I would say, if that's the word you want to use, that's the word we'll use as far as forgiveness for what happened to me, my niece that's 5 years younger than me, and my 2 brothers. I mean, like I said, everybody takes a lot longer, guys. My 2 brothers really haven't addressed the issue to an extent that I have, but God is very important. When you do get to where Peter is, God definitely is important in your life, including my life. So
Don't try to do it without him.
no,
I tried, it doesn't work. Trust me.
you did a great job.
Thank you, Kevin, appreciate it. And to your point about having to tell the family, yeah, when the article hit, I had to tell my entire family, aunts, I got some elderly aunts left, and cousins, and my own children. They had no idea, and I had to open up to everybody. And my wife's family, they're all Weight Watchers. They were going to see it. Just like, my God, what are they going to say? What are the people at work going to say? And nothing bad, only love and support. Yes?
I was wondering which of these 2 things were tougher for you to overcome, whether it was pride or not fitting into measuring up to what society expected of us?
Well, the pride kept me from getting help. That was probably the #1 roadblock. The #2 roadblock is the not fitting in, the damaged goods, less of a man, all of this stuff, and blaming yourself because your father died and the abuse happened and all the other bad stuff that happens in your life and thinking you deserve it. So they're very close 1 and 2. Great question. Thank you. Other questions? Yes?
Peter, I don't know how this, so the ones that abused you, is there any evidence that they had been abused in their life? And is this something that...
There's a lot of studies out there, and just because you've been abused doesn't mean you're going to actually abuse somebody else. But the serial abusers have had serious trauma in their life. And Kevin, I don't know if you had any studies or seen one way or the other. But just because you're a victim doesn't mean you're an abuser. But if you're a serious abuser, you've probably had some kind of serious trauma in your past. I know the people I've met, it's been very cyclical in the family, right? You know, the grandparents right on down, and just the whole family affair thing. So, that's true. Oh, other questions? Great. Yes?
I just want to say thank you, because I know how hard it is to get up and say what you had to say. It's amazing. It's your first time, and I just take my hat off to you and say thank you very much. It really moved me.
Thank you, brother. That means a lot. That means a lot. Right.
Peter, how is your conversation with God today differ from when you were with digital, when you were doing the corporate climb up and whatever? Has there been a change in your conversation?
Yeah.
Are you talking to God more or what?
All of the above, more, deeper, you know, asking more that, you know, what is it you want over here? You know, when the opportunity for the article hit, it's like, God, what are you doing over here? Not trying to control it and manage everything myself. I've had to give everything over to God, and it's been an incredible relief. Like, I don't have to manage everything anymore. It's a weight off my shoulders.
You were a project manager, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here I am with all of my control issues, major control issues, and I take a job where I'm completely responsible for everything, but have zero control over the people and the schedule and the subcontractors and everything else. That'll kill your perfectionism. Or kill you, one of the two. Thanks, Mike. Other questions? Discussion? Yes?
If one of us runs into someone who needs help,
Mhm.
what's the fastest and quickest way to get help for that person?
Lots of things. First off, you probably want to call your health insurance company and tell them you need a professional who deals with whatever happened. You'll probably be the 500th person to call that insurance company that day. Don't think like you're the only one, and what are they going to say, because they get this all the time. They'll give you a list of pros in your area, and you just call them and say, you know, something happened and I don't know what to do, can you help? And they take it from there. And I'd say get a list of 2 or 3 and talk to them all on the phone screen and see who you click with and who you don't. And go from there. For me, it's been this whole like a 3-legged stool kind of thing where, you know, the pros tell you things you just didn't already know. And then support groups are people who get it because your friends and family don't get it. But then your friends and family know you and love you and are just there for whatever you need. So between the 3 of them, the first thing is just get the professional help. You can't go this one alone. Because if you go it alone, you can fix yourself, you'd be fixed already, and you wouldn't need the phone call. So definitely the insurance companies, the websites on the page I gave you there, lots of reading information. There's 24/7 counselors there via chat, phone, things like that. Call them in and just tell them anything you want. They've heard it all, you're not going to shock them. That answer your question?
Yeah, I think our first reaction though, I mean, if we, obviously is take it to prayer and
Yeah.
then go that route, you know?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
they can't do it alone.
No, you're not going to do it alone.
Right.
You're not going to. Yes, sir.
What do you say to the possibility I have grandchildren
Hmm?
that I suspect were abused?
Hmm?
Would it be good for me to talk to them and let them know that there's help, that they need help with that? And I'm not in a controlling situation, I'll be able to help them, but
Yeah.
if it's true, will you say?
Before you do anything, I say talk to a pro because it's probably a common question. I'm sure there's a lot of common process for it. You know, you certainly don't want to put ideas in their head,
Right.
but if there's something, you certainly want to know about it. Don't be surprised if they don't tell you about anything because they want to hide it. But there's a lot of signs, and I think any of the websites I gave you, the Great Crisis Center, you can call them real quick and just say, you know, what do I do? What do people do in my situation? I think between the contacts on that page and maybe a pro that you just keep around because you need them, you'll be able to filter it out pretty quick.
Okay.
But just don't go it alone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I think Solomon said somewhere, a wise king has many counselors.
Mhm.
So, not supposed to do it ourselves. Cool, other questions? See?
So you talked about, for generations,
Mm.
society didn't talk about
Mm.
it, church didn't talk
Right.
about it, and then everyone's now beginning to talk about
Mm.
it. Church is always sometimes 10, 15 years behind.
Yeah.
What do you think the church could do better at to speak to mental illness, to trauma?
I went off with somebody on that exact same subject, how the church doesn't do enough for guys, not that we ask for it. I think, number one, when a guy walks in and says, I'm drinking, I'm beating my wife, I'm doing all this stuff, the church says, well, you got to repent. And yes, that's all part of it and all. But they repent, and they do it again, and you don't deal with the root cause of the problem. So no matter what you repent or pray, whatever, if you're not solving the root cause, you're not going to solve the problem. I think number one is making it safe to talk about, bring it up, get in people's faces and say, it's safe, it's time, this is a safe place. I would say a lot of people may not want to mention it in their church because that's everybody they know, and they're more likely to mention it in a strange church where nobody knows them. If a bunch of churches got together and had a list, a contact list of who to talk to, where to go, all the resources that are out there, tell people, put it on your website, have a string of pros who handle these certain things, that if someone calls it, yeah, I mean, we can, the church has this place, don't get me wrong, we can help people spiritually with all the things the Bible says for us to do, but I think the churches do their thing, the pros do, everybody does their little stovepipe, and if everyone kind of got together and kind of piggybacked off each other, you'd have resources where people can get help. So I think telling people it's okay to talk about, it's common, it happens, it's time. Offer programs, offer us a support group for people. Point people to a support group in another church where people can talk and not wear their dirty laundry with everybody they know. I guess I'm kind of angry that churches aren't in the forefront of this because it's a spiritual problem. And there's so much we can do. And I can go on all day, but I'll chat with you later. Yeah, you got me cranked up now. Yeah. I went off with Jim Mason on that, and he just kind of looked at me and said, well, why don't you come to my church? And why don't you talk? And I said, about what? He said, the story you just told me. And I was like, you guys talk about this stuff? He said, yeah, churches need to talk about this stuff. Okay, and then that's happening May 4th, and then I wound up here, and all of a sudden it's like, my God, the church needs to be involved in this. Great question. Good question. Let's chat. Other questions? Yes.
One, just as a past educator, one of the things we just never went over, grooming behaviors.
Yeah.
How does that manifest itself? I mean, like if you were looking at something, because I'm really young.
Yeah. A lot of times, predators look for kids from broken homes.
Okay.
Easy targets. They won't bother with a kid who, has been trained and educated and stable family and things. They prey on kids who are desperate for attention because kids would rather have bad attention than no attention. I learned that in foster care situations. That's why they want to go back to their birth parents. That website I have has a whole list of things they do, but in summary, they'll call kids out, make them feel special. They will groom the parents and earn their trust, and it's this huge con game. If you read any of the scandals from the Catholic Church, it was all the same thing over and over again, just gain confidence and go from there. And Kevin, I don't know if you have anything else to say about predators and how to find them.
My story, like I said earlier, was my mother's boyfriend, one of 8 kids, divorced parents. Got divorced when I was 4. For lack of a better word or thought, new dad, same responsibility, you expect your adults, new school, new city. 5th grade, I missed 31 days of school. Nobody seemed to care, nobody seemed to notice. Now my kid misses a day of school, I get an email, a text, and a phone call. Stayed home, was being abused for those 31 days by my mother's boyfriend. Mom's working a lot of hours, trying to make ends meet to little to no success. Like I said, it's a process where they gain your trust and then they become part of your family. I mean, he has the same rights in the family as I do. And then you worry about if you told somebody that you're going to break up mom and dad, where are we going to live? Right now we're living in his father's 3-decker. I mean, where are we going to live if they break up? Or is anybody going to believe me? Or are they going to send me away? I'm crazy. So that's just my story, but a lot of time I've heard other stories. We have another friend that was father of the Catholic Church. Mother dies, father's a cop. Dad's working a lot of overtime. Priest is hanging around with the family, taking the kid out for ice cream. Next thing you know, you want to see the rectory, you build the trust. Next thing you know, this kid's being abused, you know, and now he's dealing with it at 50 years old. So a lot of it has to do with most of the people that abuse you, 80, 90%, you know. It's not the guy at Walmart and
At the one, yeah.
you know, it's somebody you know. And it takes time and trust. And I mean, I was 10 years old. What do I know at 10 years old?
Right.
I mean, I used to beat myself up and blame myself because I was thinking, as an adult, I wasn't thinking as that 10-year-old kid. Then you realize, you see it, what a 10-year-old kid does, like my nephew spills a drink. Brother's yelling at him to clean it up, and he goes and gets toilet paper to clean up a drink. I mean, that's what a 10-year-old does, you know?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's definitely a process. And like, I got invited to that Oprah show last month when they were doing the Michael Jackson special.
That's a
And
prime
they talked
example
about
right there.
him grooming. And I mean, who doesn't want to be friends with Michael Jackson? I mean, he's a millionaire, you're traveling all over the world with him, you're going to shows. The family's even bought into it. They're traveling all over the world with him. They're living in all these beautiful hotels. It's, you know, people look the other way. I mean, personally, I can't say how my mother didn't notice 30. But I think there was another thing. 8 kids, she's overwhelmed. Maybe she's working a lot not to. I mean, some people are workaholics, like Peter was on earlier, and then she's drinking a lot to self-medicate, and maybe she's looking the other way. I can't say she knew, but she should have. So, the process. It's not like one day
No, one day.
it's turned on, they do it to you.
Yeah.
It's over time.
Gaining confidence and control.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Thank you, Kevin.
what the church's responsibility is if, let's say, well, I don't know if I should even ask this
We're
question.
mandatory reporters,
Yeah.
and we've done that here. So
Do what?
we've had to report here to authorities. We have to, we're mandatory reporters. We do.
Okay, other questions?
Peter, I know we've got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Quick thing, and maybe we can talk to you after.
Yeah, I'll be around afterwards, guys, if you have questions, want to chat.
I think your statistics, like if I calculated right, I think maybe about 30 of us here, there's probably 2 or 3 guys here that have been through what, at least have been through what you've been through, they haven't talked about or whatever. I know you went to the depression hospital or whatever, some guys just live with it, but it also affects your relationship. I know you and I were in the foster group, you know, and it affects your relationship with your spouse and your kids and whatever.
Yeah.
And I've learned that you may have a problem child, but your problem's worse because you have a problem. And sometimes you can't necessarily solve the problem with the child,
Right.
but you can't work it yourself.
Right.
So I guess, how has it affected your relationship with your kids now, being that you talked to them about it,
Yeah.
or whatever? Is it improved it?
Yeah, it's brought us 1,000,000% closer. My youngest 2 kids that we adopted, they have metoo stories also. So, in a weird way, my background was very conducive to foster kids because I'm sitting in the DSS classes and they're telling me, you know, these kids have loss, they have grief, they have trauma, and I'm like, well, of course they do. I was like, why am I in this class? I know this already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it helped me to relate and understand the problems, and it gave me a lot more insight that somebody else may not have. But since I had to, since the magazine article came out and I had to tell people, tell my children, it's just brought nothing but closer. My oldest child was absolutely stunned. She wouldn't talk to me, but she went off with my wife for about an hour on the phone. The youngest 2 were mad, like, why didn't you tell me? It's like, well, you were young. What am I going to tell you? Too young. And now you're ready, and now I'm ready. So it's absolutely brought us closer.
All right, thanks, Peter.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
There we go.
so before we clean this up and put the chairs back, I'd like to have everyone come up and we'll get a
Mike,
picture.
just a couple of tomorrow's Easter, so a little bigger Sunday than normal. We could use a little bit of help with some stuff. We're planning on